everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about the federal minimum wage. I'd like to start out by saying that rent has increased over 30% since 2009, while the federal minimum wage has not changed at all. Essentials like groceries and fuel have also gone up in price, while millions of workers are paid on the same baseline of $7.25 per hour. For people with tight schedules, like college students, that can sometimes be their only option to get a minimum wage job, and it does not provide enough to pay for the basic necessities. Right now, the federal minimum wage is only $7.25 per hour, which means that employers are only required to pay $7.25 per hour for an employee. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, that number has not changed since 2009. Over time, inflation has caused other essentials like food, gas, groceries, and transportation to go up in price, while federal the federal minimum wage has remained at $7.25. I believe the federal minimum wage should be raised to $10 per hour to provide an equal opportunity and stability for minimum wage workers. This is a very important issue because minimum wage jobs are often a starting point for college kids and other young adults entering the workforce. Many students rely on these jobs to pay for rent, food, transportation, and tuition. When wages stay the same but costs rise, it becomes harder for people to focus on building financial independence, and it becomes a lot more common for people to struggle to get by day to day. So instead of achieving financial independence, many are left struggling. Today I'm going to explain why the federal minimum wage is no longer sufficient, how raising it to $10 could help, and what outcomes could be expected in the future. I'll begin by discussing why the minimum wage is no longer sufficient. First, the current federal minimum wage is no longer enough to afford basic necessities. Despite the major increase in the cost of living, the minimum wage has not changed. According to the data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, prices for essentials like housing, food, and transportation have increased significantly in that time. As a result, workers are earning the same amount but paying more for basic necessities. Additionally, even if someone works full time at minimum wage, they would only earn $15,080 in 1 year before taxes. According to the federal poverty guidelines, that would mean that for most households, you would be at or below the federal poverty line. Now consider a college student who only can work part-time at that same wage. They would have no way of affording their basic necessities without applying for government assistance programs or stuff like that, which workers shouldn't have to do. Now that I've established the issue, let's look at why raising the federal minimum wage to $10 per hour offers a practical solution. Raising the minimum wage to $10 per hour would be a reasonable and moderate adjustment. When you account for inflation, $7.25 has significantly less purchasing power than it did in 2009 when it was established. According to the Economic Policy Institute, the real value of minimum wage has actually decreased over time. Increasing it by $2.75 would be a moderate adjustment that would be noticeable for workers, but it wouldn't be too extreme of a change to be hard on businesses. We can also observe what's currently happening across the country. Many states and cities have already raised their minimum wage to over or at $10 per hour. Research from institutions like the Brookings Institute suggests that these increases can reduce poverty and increase consumer spending. Now that we've seen how this works as a solution, let's look at what realistic outcomes can be expected in the future. If the minimum wage is increased, it could provide a more stable future for millions of workers. Higher wages give people more purchasing power, which strengthens the economy. Workers who are financially stable are often healthier and more productive and less likely to leave an employer, which is very beneficial for employers. On the other hand, if the federal minimum wage were to stay the same, the problem will likely just continue to get worse. As the cost of living continues to rise, workers would continue to struggle when they're paid the same. the gap between wages and housing costs would continue to rise, making it nearly impossible for young adults to achieve financial independence. In conclusion, it is essential that the federal minimum wage be raised to $10 per hour to create a fair and stable economic foundation for millions of workers, especially young adults entering the workforce. We started by looking at the problems with the current minimum wage, then discussed how raising it to $10 an hour is a practical solution, and finally, we explored what the future could look like depending on if that change were to be made or not. I encourage you to pay attention when you're voting and do research on the candidates that you're voting for and ensure that they're advocating for the policies that you would like for them to advocate to. Your vote could be the difference between someone's wage, which can make a very large difference on their life. Why should wages stay the same for so long when the cost of living goes up so much? Thank you for your time. Hope I've motivated you to support minimum wage federally being $10 an hour.